With all due respect to this amusing free browser game originally created for Snapchat, hey, Chris Baker here. With the release of a certain mid-80s based movie to HBO Max, I can't help but once again realize how underrepresented Wonder Woman is in gaming. Of all the comic book characters out there who have never had their name in the title of a video game, there is no single more iconic and deserving character than Diana of Themyscira, and it's not even close. Anyone who knows anything about DC Comics knows about the Trinity, the DC Universe's three most important characters. Of course, those three characters are Superman, Batman, and no, not the Flash, not Batman Beyond, not Aquaman, not Green Lantern, not the Watchmen, not Constantine, not Swamp Thing, not Catwoman, yikes, definitely not that Catwoman either. I probably don't have to tell you, but it's Wonder Woman. And unlike every DC character I just listed, Diana has never had a commercially released video game with her name in the title. Sure, there are plenty of other superheroes who very much deserve freedom from the never-had-their-own-game club, but as much as I'd love to play a game based exclusively on a Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Black Widow, Shazam, Nightwing, Moon Knight, She-Hulk, they just can't compete in terms of being a consistent force in pop culture for the past nearly 80 years. Great Hera, she's never even had a cancelled game, at least none that we know about. Even unquestionably lesser, but still great, characters like Kyle Rayner Green Lantern, Witchblade, and fraggin' Lobo got that far. So why hasn't there been a Wonder Woman game? Well, it's certainly not for lack of visceral combat potential. Remember watching this in the theater in 2017? It was the closest thing to a Batman Arkham fight I've ever seen in a superhero movie. I literally walked out of the cinema hoping Wonder Woman was Rocksteady's next game. Still kinda wish it was. Beyond this, just think of all the potential for varying things up in combat. She wields a shield as well as Captain America does, and she's way better at throwing a tiara. Her melee weapon mastery rivals Kratos, and can be anything from swords and axes to freaking Mjolnir. Yeah, that actually happened during the 90s Marvels vs. DC event. Her bracelets of submission can flick away bullets like Starkiller to blaster bolts in The Force Unleashed, not to mention unleash this kind of devastation. And her lasso of truth? There's so much you can do with that. Of course, it makes for an awesome long-range weapon. Just imagine the creative combos you could do by holding someone in place, maybe whipping them around a bit. We're also seeing the defensive capabilities of the lasso in Wonder Woman 1984. But beyond all that, the lasso can facilitate Spider-Man-like locomotion throughout a city, whether that's between buildings or even grabbing the occasional lightning bolt. Maybe traveling with her lasso is even a sort of stepping stone to actual flight.
Wonder Woman, you can make her fly.
Or her trademark invisible jet.
It's Spider-Man! Kick it!
And remember THQ's Punisher game? How Frank Castle interrogated enemies to get key information? Using the lasso of truth for its true purpose, you could even have that element, where you have to leave some dudes conscious so that you know where to go next. And since we're talking a game here, I wouldn't even be opposed to leveling the lasso up. The more you use it, the more truth you'll get out of someone.
Did you do this?
We didn't do it. We aren't responsible for the tree monsters. I secretly watch NASCAR. I take long showers. I think paper straws are stupid and get too soggy. I was excited for Jazz Fest. Ah! Fine. I was very excited for Jazz Fest.
And don't forget Wonder Woman's abilities that people don't often talk about. Accelerated healing that makes resting to regain health actually make sense in a video game. Enhanced speed for even more frenetic combat and faster environmental traversal. Talking to animals if you want a dash of Aquaman shtick. And who can forget exemplary arts and craft skills?
Okay, give it a spin.
Hey, thanks, Wonder Woman.
The situations Wonder Woman finds herself in also allow for tons of costumes and potential environments that span the time stream, against all types of interesting enemies. Maybe she's defending the Hall of Justice from Legion of Doom supervillains in her classic costume. Maybe she's taking on mythological monsters from Ares' army as she fights alongside her Amazon sisters on the shores of Themyscira. Or maybe she's out wearing normal clothes, be that against German spies on the streets of World War I London, or against a big monster at a modern shopping mall. Dramatically revealing the classic look by the end of it all. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that Wonder Woman has been a playable character in quite a few games, even though it did take until the end of the 16-bit generation for her gaming debut, joined by Cheetah in Justice League Task Force. Of those DC Universe and Justice League games that Wonder Woman has appeared in, some have been great. Some have been decent.
No one else is in their league. Justice League Heroes. Rated T for Teen.
Some you've probably never heard of, and that's for the best. But even at her best in these games, Diana is rarely given any degree of greater weight than the other characters, usually nothing more meaningful than her own Themyscira level at best. Her fighting is almost inarguably best handled in the Injustice games, but even then, that's an alternate Wonder Woman who's become a bad guy. If you call either Injustice the best Wonder Woman game, it's sad that we're missing the part of the character that actually makes her a great hero. Pretty important, don't you think?
Submit to me.
Wonder Woman gets perhaps the most respect as a character with Wonder Woman-focused events in the likes of DC Universe Online. But it's still just an event. It's not a Wonder Woman game. Not to get too woke about all this, but I do have to think there's only one big reason a comic character as downright iconic as Wonder Woman somehow made it this far without headlighting her own video game. Namely, she's not a dude. Between DC and Marvel alone, there are well over 400 unique video games. Guess how many have a female character or a group of female characters in the title? 4. Those would be the critically reviled Catwoman for Game Boy Color, the critically ignored Catwoman for Game Boy Advance, the embarrassing Catwoman for Xbox, GameCube, and PS2, whose most memorable feature was its idle animation, which actually had the name of Ogglecam.
Like what you see?
No, I'm actually creeped out, Hallie. I don't know why you signed off on this. Arguably reaching the lofty description of mediocre, Danger Girl for PlayStation was probably the best of these 4 games, and it had quite a few Ogglecams of its own. It was one of those third-person action shooter games where you could just circle strafe the final boss and win. In recent years, 2 major releases could be considered female-led games, those being Ms. Marvel in Marvel's Avengers and Supergirl in Injustice 2, but they're definitely still ensemble pieces, and they absolutely don't have a female superhero's name in the title. It's time for that to change. It's time for a well-known superhero to have her name stated in the same breath as the likes of Lara Croft, Samus Aran, Alex Vance, Joanna Dark. It's time for Wonder Woman. What would you want out of a Wonder Woman game? Are there any heroes who have never had their own game whom you feel would be more deserving? You're wrong, but I'd love to hear you make your case. Oh, and there's a link to this browser-based Wonder Woman game in the description. Speaking of 1984, it would have been a huge arcade hit if it had been actually released then. But instead, it's just an amusing commercial. Enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.